Hey guys, it is Ryan. I'm not sure if you know this about me, but I'm a bit of a fun fanatic when I can. I like to work, but I like fun too. It's a thing. And now the truth is out there. I can tell you about my favorite place to have fun. Chumba Casino. They have hundreds of social casino style games to choose from with new games released each week. You can play for free anytime, anywhere. And each day brings a new chance to collect daily bonuses. So join me in the fun. Sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
No, I saw that coming. As soon as he missed that header, I could feel something coming. So I'm glad that you got that out of your system.
Ripples in the universe. You could feel the ripples in the universe. Yeah, I was steaming. What a
everyone, and welcome back to the Social Media Derby. As always, before we get started, for those of you that are watching us on YouTube, please give us a subscribe, give us a comment or share, like if you can. Let us know down below what you think of some of the things that we're talking about. And if you're listening on any of the podcast or audio platforms, please give us a follow and a 5-star review if you can. So let's go ahead and get into it, Ant. First of all, how are you doing, mate? Did you manage to catch any of the football today?
Yeah, I did. Managed to watch the United game. I went to watch Tottenham women play against Sheffield United in the FA Cup as well. That was a really good game. 3-2. They were 2-0 down. That was actually pretty exciting. So yeah, I've seen a bunch of goals today. So it's been a pretty good football day. Can't complain. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. I was just telling you about offline the Everton-Aston Villa game, which was, as I said to you, super Aggie, which was a good game to watch. It was quite funny. And then obviously, yeah, just turned off the old Man United Tottenham game. So with that in mind, why don't we go ahead and get started on that match? And before I ask you how you felt it went, let's just remind everyone of the predictions that we made in the last episode. So I think, Anthony, you went for a 3-2 United win, and I went for a 3-1 Tottenham away win. Obviously, both wrong, but I will concede that you are closer, and I do remember you saying that it could easily also be a draw. So, what did you think of the game?
Yeah, it was an interesting one. I think it played out pretty much how we both kind of predicted. Even though I went for a 3-2 United win, I didn't say we'd play much better and we'd be the better team or anything like that. I just thought that the style that Tottenham play was always going to give us a chance, even if we played pretty poorly or didn't play up to certain levels that we think our players can get to. So I think it pretty much went that way, even though the result wasn't correct on either of our sides. I think the game pretty much went the way that we expected. It's not the most inspiring way for United to play, to be at home against a team that, in all respects to Tottenham, most times we beat. And they were a much better team. They had way more of the ball. Their set pieces, they looked threatening every single time. I was bricking it every single time Pedro Porro got on a corner or a free kick. I thought we were in danger almost immediately. And they scored from one. They hit the bar with the other. They were really, really put us under a huge amount of pressure from set pieces. But then from open play, I think if you take away the Bentancur goal, which was really sloppy from us to concede in like the first minute after the halftime break, I don't think they had too many chances. I think they definitely played better football. It was more attractive to watch. But I still think we held a lot of threat going the other way. And I think, we're going to touch on it probably later on in the pod. But yeah, we should have won probably. The stats probably don't say that, but McTominay has a free header in the middle of the goal in the last minute of the game. And yeah, we win that game 3-2. And I think this is why I caught a little bit of heat on Instagram when I was talking about some of the players' performances, and I think I was talking or mentioned Scott McTominay's performance at Forest. And this is the issue. He offers absolutely nothing except comes up with a goal. And then when he has these opportunities to score, if he doesn't take them, what do we get from him? Absolutely zero output. So even though Christian Eriksen looked a bit leggy and he was starting to get kind of overwhelmed, I think, by Bentancur and Højbjerg in the second half, I would have kept him on, or I'd have brought someone else on who can actually offer some bite, and we don't really have to worry about, trying to provide balls in the air and hoof the ball up to McTominay to try and hope that he nicks a goal like he has in a few other games this season, and we can actually progress the ball in the way that we wanted to. We'll talk about later with the transfers, but there's a couple of players that are mooted to leave United in the next couple of days that I would have chucked on before before McTominay. Hannibal being one good example. He was in my mind that he came out. But yeah, it wasn't a good game from our perspective. And saying that, we could have won, and it could have gone exactly the way I predicted. But yeah,
what did you make of the goals? I mean, because obviously the Højlund finish, I don't know about you, but he binned it, right? What did you make of that goal? And obviously the Rashford goal also was a pretty nice bit of play. What did you make of the performances and the goals there?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably one of the few bright spots of the game, really. Højlund, it was a really clinical finish at a tight angle, and he basically gave Vicario no chance. So, that's a really good finish. It will be good for his confidence. He already kind of, after he scored that goal, started to perform better. He, gave Mickey van der Ven a really good game, I thought, who's generally pretty assured. And, the Spurs fans are talking about him like he's, the next Van Dijk or something. But I think Højlund gave him a really good game. I know it's his first game back, so he was no doubt a bit rusty and he pulled up with cramp and stuff like that. But considering how Højlund has been playing over the last couple of months, the fact that he actually gave him a really good game, and I think there was one point on the counter where he flicked it past him and kind of made Mickey van der Ven look a little bit silly. So I think it was a really good game from him. Rashford's goal was really good too. I thought in the first half he looked really at it. In the second half he kind of petered out, and so that's a bit disappointing. But slowly does it. We weren't getting a half of good football from Rashford a couple of weeks ago. So, he's got to work his way to the performance levels of last season. So I think both Højlund and Rashford had a pretty good game for the most part. I wouldn't say they were 9, 10s out of 10, but I'd give them a good 7, maybe Højlund an 8 out of 10. I thought Garnacho looked really good once he swapped over to the left wing. I think him and Udogie they pretty much cancelled each other out when he was on the right-hand side. I don't think either one of them got the better of each other. I don't think either had a great game. They kind of just nullified each other. So generally, though, getting 2 out of your 3 attackers to score goals has been a bit of a problem for us in previous games. So I'm really positive about the goals we scored. I thought the Rashford goal was a really good move as well. It kind of looked like we tried the 1-2 and it didn't come off and it ricocheted. But when you watch the replay back, somehow Rashford just managed to nick in front of Pedro Porro and get the ball back. And the finish was really good. He left Vicario again with no chance. So, yeah, our goals were really good. The goals we gave up, it was really poor for us to give up that Richarlison goal. The amount of bodies in there, you'd hope your goalie would come out and claim it. But if not, you've got, pretty tall geezers in there like Varane, Evans, Højlund himself. There's a bunch of tall players. You'd hope that would be able to stop Richarlison scoring. And then, the second goal was just really lax. I feel like they played the ball out really well, the transition from defence to attack, but still, the ball to Bentancur was so easy. And then the finish, Onana might as well not be there. He just doesn't react quick enough, goes straight through him. And not the greatest goals to concede. But at this point, the football we've seen so far as United fans, I don't think any of us were shocked to see the goals we conceded. And I don't think any of us were shocked to see the goals we scored. It's pretty much this has been our season. Some decent stuff going forward and then just absolutely lax defending. So, not too shocked. And I don't think I can complain too much with the result. But, having that McTominay header at the penalty spot in the last minute, not taking it, hurts. But, it is what it is, 2-2. I'm pretty disappointed we didn't win, but I could argue that the first game in the season probably could have ended 2-2 as well, but we ended up losing. But that tends to be how we play. We lose games and sometimes we nick them, but it's only the second draw, I think, in the Premier League we've had this season, so they were bound to come.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. I think from my perspective, it was, as a Man United fan, I'd probably be overall not too unhappy about, getting a point. Because obviously, as we talked about, as much as you had like big chances, and obviously, if McTominay could just head the ball quite simply at target, I think anything at the target, he was pretty much going to score. I know that Vicario is a great goalkeeper, but with the amount of pace that was coming on the cross, the amount of pace that he could just get on a header, and from the distance out from goal, I do feel like pretty much anything that was on target was going in. So kind of disappointing from that perspective. But I would say, Tottenham did kind of dominate, not dominate, I feel like that's probably a strong word to use, but they did have the best of possession. They obviously, had quite good set piece kind of style against you guys. They did seem to get quite a lot of opportunities from set pieces. Obviously, when you've got a keeper like Onana in goal, that's not going to come out like an Emi Martinez or whoever else to really try and come and claim and dominate his box. It does make you susceptible to a lot of kind of set pieces, free kicks, corners, whatever else. So I think generally speaking, a point. I mean, Arsenal, we got a point against them. I don't see there's any shame really in getting a point against them, because they are quite a difficult team to play against. As much as they'll give you chances, they will create a lot of chances against you also, and they also have a way of kind of tiring out the opposition pretty quickly. So I think generally speaking, I don't think it's a terrible result for you guys. I think it's something you can build on. Had you gone and got smashed, then obviously it would be kind of demoralizing. I think you probably will be disappointed the fact that you went up twice and you just had no bottle really to keep a lead, which is obviously a big issue for you guys. But I think generally speaking, the thing I'd be most worried about as a Man United fan is we don't score enough. I think I saw a stat on, before the game came on, you're bottom of the league for shot conversion. Like, that absolutely stinks. How can you as Man United be 20th in the Premier League in terms of shot conversion, right? So from that perspective, I think your shot conversion today, not too bad. If you can get that going against other teams that are low blocks or other teams that aren't quite such a high line, then I think you'll be, you're primed to do a lot better in the league than everyone's kind of expecting you to do at this point. So from that point of view, I think, it shouldn't be too disheartening for Man United fans. I do think obviously there's some disappointment there, but I think the bright sparks of Højlund and Rashford also should be kind of a big boon for you guys too, because really those are the two players that you've been relying on doing something. They're the young, Rashford's not young anymore, but they've got the young persona. We know what can happen when Rashford is on fire. He can completely change your whole team. We've seen what Højlund can do in the Champions League in terms of scoring. If he can bring some of that form into the Premier League, then you solve a lot of the critical issues that you've got, right? Like, because we've seen you in games this season defend really well, right? Really resolute defending. Johnny Evans, Varane, you're getting Martinez back, and we'll touch on him in a minute. But we know that you can defend. The issue is, can you score, and can you score from enough different outlets to really make a difference, right? Because there are going to be games where Rashford's not playing his best. There are going to be games where Bruno's not playing his best. There's going to be games where Højlund's not playing his best. But you need to try and have a few different outlets. And I think that's going to be the big thing. And I think today, that's probably the positive that you could take away from the game, really, is that, the two guys that you are kind of relying on to do something and to get something for your team had decent games and got something out of the game in terms of output. So from that point of view, I don't think it's all that bad.
Yeah, it's always just finding the balance, though, isn't it? Like,
yeah,
when we do attack well, we generally always leak in goals. When we do defend well, we don't generally attack well. It almost seems like they're. This is why we talked about after, what game was it? The one, I think it was the Forest game, when I was just like, look, people can't say we don't have a style of play. We do have a style of play, because our attack and our defense bounce off each other. The problem is we don't have a cohesive style of play, and it's not a good style of play, and it doesn't work clearly because we're in bloody 7th or 8th position in the league. So for us to have a style of play that works, you'll see kind of a correlation between our results. And the reasons why we've been so up and down is because we haven't transitioned from what we were last season to clearly what Ten Hag wants us to be this season well. So when we attack well, we defend badly. When we defend well, we attack badly. It's almost like we have to be gung-ho
Yeah, on
actually
Foot
attack.
Manager, you've got two
You know,
settings: ultra defensive or ultra attacking.
exactly.
You can't do anything in the middle.
Yeah, and we don't hold the ball. We don't have a possession based style. I can see, and I understand why Tottenham fans will come off the back of that game and say, "I'd rather be us." Apart from the fact they're fifth, like joint on points with you guys, and they're pretty close to their targets. And I think we probably have the same targets as Tottenham this season, if we're being completely honest.
Yeah.
But they actually hold the ball, but it's not like a Pep. Um, Vincent Company possession style play or Louis van Gaal where you just hold the ball and do F all with it. They get the ball, but they actually show it attacking intent the whole time. And it's almost like Ange says to them, take the least amount of touches and the least amount of passes to get from A to B. And just keep the ball moving quickly, because Tottenham, I think, are probably the number. They look, at least on the eye, to be the number one team when it comes to moving the ball quickly, which is always going to be a good style of football to watch, right? Liverpool, I think, are probably up there too. So yeah, I don't blame them. Like they have a better style than us, and it's better to watch.
And there's something great about one thing. I don't really want to give Tottenham like too many compliments here, but one of the things that I think is missing from the game of football today, especially with the kind of Pep style that's been introduced, and something that Liverpool do really well, something that I've seen Tottenham do really well this season, is a player passes and immediately starts moving somewhere else. You see what I'm saying? They don't backtrack. They pass and move. It's like an L1X kind of thing they're doing here, where they're playing the ball, immediately going forward to see if they can give the receiver of the ball like another option. And I see that there's a lot of like recycling of positions, whereas with Pep, it kind of feels quite strict. And with Arteta too, it's quite strict about like, you stay in your position. This is your area. You have a certain area that you can go forward in. You have a certain area that you can go back in, but that's it. Unless you're like a hyper attacking player, when you've got a bit more, kind of free will to go where you want. For the centre mids, the right back, the left back, they don't have so much ability to go forward. Whereas with, something that I've seen Tottenham do really well this season is you see them pass and move. Immediately they're trying to get onto like a through ball, and it goes well with what you're saying in terms of like minimizing touches. I'll do 1-2 touches and pass it to the guy that's just run off of it, right? So I think from that point of view, they're able to progress up the pitch quite quickly. But at the same time, I think we see in the game, as soon as that player passes and moves, if the next ball isn't perfect or if the next ball gets intercepted, they're screwed, because there's someone like missing at the back now. You've got opportunities to start attacking them. And I think that's what you guys did really well today, is like, you broke up play, not necessarily always in like the middle third or their third, but you broke it up and then you quickly moved it forward. And that's the kind of style that I think suits United. The issue is, can you do it against, low block type teams where they're not going to bomb forward? And that's where I guess maybe the strategy, the tactics from Ten Hag really need to come into it.
Bet like the pros with the world's largest sports book right at your fingertips. The Circa Sports app is now available in Illinois. Sports betting the way it should be. Now you can download, fund, and bet like a pro from anywhere in Illinois. Download your new bookie today at circasports.com. Circasports.com. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER or text ILGAMB to 833-234.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I would agree with you. I don't think we executed it as well as we have done against Villa and Chelsea. I think we executed it against those guys, and it's not just because we won. I just think generally the execution of, breaking the ball up, harrying the players, counter-pressing, and then moving it very quickly to our attacking players on the last shoulder, we did it much better in those games. And to be honest, if we won that game 3-2, the McTominay goal was not from that. It was Garnacho getting it on the touchline, playing in a brilliant ball, and us having a free man in the penalty area. So, cross and header, it's not really the same style. So, yeah. The execution was slightly off, and you got to praise Tottenham for coming and playing their game. I don't think any United fan or Tottenham fan, I think equally, or rival fan as well, I guess, who would have second guessed Postecoglou coming and doing the same football that he always does was bonkers. He's going to do this now in every single game going forward.
Yeah,
he has. It's just a given. You can guarantee you will. Some weeks they'll win and it'll be beautiful. Some weeks they'll get a 4-1 like Chelsea. it's the beauty of being a Tottenham fan. I guess that's what it's going to be like for us. Yeah, it's probably the same amount of jeopardy, but without the excitement. So I can see why the United fans are upset. But yeah, we can get into the finer points now because I know you've got a few questions around the game.
Yeah, I think the first one, I guess, is just obviously we saw Leacher, the butcher, come on for I think about 20-ish minutes maybe at the end of that game. Looked decent on the ball. Like he had a couple of some opportunities to mess up. Let's put it that way, right? Like I remember in my mind clearly a ball coming to him with two Tottenham players pressing him quite quickly and him being quite far up the pitch and managing to somehow kind of like dummy all of them and hit it back that way, back up the pitch to one of his own players. And I thought to myself, that's what you bought him for. That's something that a lot of players can't do because it's a risky thing to do. Back in the day, 40 years ago, 30 years ago, if you did that, you were getting punched up in the dressing room, right? Brian Clough was coming in there, headbutting you straight away. So how good did it feel to see him back? And I guess after you answer that, my question will be: is when he is fully back, who's coming out of this team? Is it Evans? Is it Varane? What are you doing, mate?
It felt great getting him back. I understand exactly what you're talking about when it comes to the risks he takes. But that's the style of football I think Ten Hag wants to play, and that's the way he played at Ajax as well. Leacher was doing the exact same things. He draws attackers onto him, and then he's got the technical ability to be able to get out of tight spaces. And then once he breaks their initial press, he's got some space and he's got really good technical ability and vision to break lines with his passing. So it's been a massive, massive, massive miss to not have him for these first 3 or 4 months of the season. And I know you were getting on to me, lots of people were getting on to him for his first few games of the season. But even with that cameo, it was quite obvious to see something was wrong. I mean, we know it because they talked about how he, had a lapse in his rehab with the foot injury at the beginning of the season, and he was rushed back, and that was why he was playing like an absolute mental case.
And a couple of people got fired, so we can kind of figure out something happened. Yeah,
exactly. A couple of men lost their job, but this little cameo was basically what we saw last season. I mean, there was one point, not the one that you mentioned, where he drew Brennan Johnson on him and then rolled it through his legs, and then got the throw in. And I was just like, oh my God, this is what I've been missing. Seeing bloody Johnny Evans and Harry Maguire before that try and do the most simple things and not be able to pull them off. And then you see Leacher come back and he's starting to nutmeg people and draw people on and do shimmies and all the kind of stuff you want from your defenders. And I even think seeing that little 20 minutes of Leacher and Varane back together, even Varane looked better. I don't think he had a bad game before Leacher came on, but with Johnny Evans, I mean, it's a world, different apart from how it is with Varane and Maguire, but it's still not the same. They don't have the same synergy. They don't have the same partnership. Leacher comes in with a bit of bite and a little bit of leadership and helps, and he's a lot more vocal. I think Varane, kind of thrives off that kind of, like Sergio Ramos was probably at Real Madrid, that kind of leadership, that kind of, vocal support in the back line. And I think not having him there has obviously affected Varane, and I think it's affected Ten Hag's belief in Varane as well. So I'm hoping that that's going to be the partnership going forward now for the rest of the season. I hope Varane can stay fit. I hope Leacher can continue his comeback. And I think seeing those two at the heart of the defence, Luke Shaw comes back at left back, probably Dalot at right back. I think I've been really impressed with Dalot in the last couple of weeks. I think he's really played well. And I think he's been doing a lot of the work that Luke Shaw was doing last season, inverting. And, he just seems to be much better with the ball, driving at the defence. I don't really think Wan-Bissaka can do that. And I actually think Dalot can actually play a more progressive pass. So I think once you get Shaw back, hopefully Martinez can stay fit. Varane can stay fit with Dalot at right back. I'd have much more confidence in our back line going forward. Even though I think Onana's still got some question marks over him, I think those four in front of him would help our defence massively. So, yeah, man, I think that's probably another one of the bright points from the game. alongside the attacker scoring some goals, is seeing Leacher come back, and hopefully he's in the team for our next game in the FA Cup as well.
Yeah, it's always great to see two very Aggie centre backs on the pitch at the same time. You always got to have a bet on who's getting sent off first. Especially when you got Romero on the pitch, he's going to be the favourite at all times to get sent off first. But yeah, no, I think as you say, obviously Lissandro is. I would say he was your best defender last year, right? So he was your best defender. I think Varane was good too. So I'm not saying that Varane was bad, but I do think he was probably your best defender last year. So
he's the leader.
Having him come back into the team, exactly, it's the link up between them two. I think with centre backs, we always say it on this pod anyway, right? Like it's always about the partnership in my mind, right? We've seen there are some defenders that it doesn't matter who they're with, they're always good, of course. But for the most part, it's really about a partnership, and you can put a really good defender next to someone who stinks. And unfortunately, the person that stinks drags everyone down. So from that point of view, I think, yeah, it is heartening to see him come back. Let's just hope he can stay fit, I guess. From a Man United fan perspective, you're probably going to want him to stay in that team and obviously come in for Johnny Evans. Although I do want to say that Johnny Evans has been really good.
He's done all right.
And
he's done all right.
He's definitely surprised based off the fact that he's very old for a footballer. And he doesn't really have any of the attributes that you think Ten Hag would want from a centre back in his team. So from that point of view, I think he's done pretty well, and he's put a good account of himself so far. I definitely think he should be coming off the bench first instead of Maguire in any games that come. If Lissandro's starting, I would prefer to see Evans come off the bench than Maguire to come on. So from that point of view, getting some depth back, which is always important. You've got a couple of other injuries, obviously, to come back as well. So obviously, Casemiro didn't make it onto the pitch today, but it does look like he's back from injury, and he'll probably slowly get integrated back into the team. So that'll be good. Would be interesting to see a double pivot with old Mainu and him together. That would definitely be a very interesting thing to see. I'd like to see kind of Casemiro going forward with the ball a bit more, because he has been, for you guys, I think, quite good at he's like a goal threat, really, and has been, which is not what anyone expected of him, but he's been doing it for you guys. So I think those are all good signs for you. But let's move away from the performance, right? And let's move away a little bit from what happened on the pitch today, and let's just look at a couple of things. So there's been a lot of rumours, as always, and a lot of just debate on X and wherever else around Man United, as you pretty much see every day of the week. But one thing that I wanted to kind of touch on was Ten Hag came out recently in a press conference and essentially said, this season everyone's kind of dissing my transfers, but last season everyone said that they were inspired. He went through the players. It was very funny when he got to Antony, because he was like, he's been okay. And I was thinking you probably should have left him out of that list of players that you were talking about. But I guess his whole point around attitudes changing towards those transfers, do you agree with that? Do you think that there has been a marked shift in like an unfair way towards some of the transfers that he's made?
I don't know if it's unfair, but I think there probably has been a little bit. But I don't know if he can really complain that much about that, because I do think for the most part, last season's transfers all banged. Like, let's not talk about them as financial deals, because I feel like every single player we bought last season, maybe Ericsson, who was a free transfer, and Malacia aside, were bad pieces of football business. You paid 60 million for Casemiro, 5-year contract, 300 grand. That's mental. He's 30 years old, or 31 years old now. He's got 4 more years on his deal at a crazy wage. That was bonkers. Like, don't get me wrong, we needed that character, and that's obviously why they did it. They decided to do that knowingly, but it's not the greatest deal. The Sancho, like I've mentioned, even when he was playing out of his mind last season, was an overpay. We probably paid 10, 15 million too much for him. And I think because it was a bit of a transfer battle between ourselves, United and Arsenal, we ended up paying more money and getting him. But I would say people overlooked some of those points. Jamie Carragher aside, to be fair to him, because I lost my mind at him last season when he was whinging about that Casemiro deal. But he's obviously right. Like, about the deal, about the football business, he's right. But in terms of the impact he had on the team, I think he was, just being a bit of a salty Liverpool fan. But I do think the attitude to all those deals has changed, because this season's deals haven't gone so well. Like last season, everyone looked at Casemiro, Lissandro, Eriksen, Malacia, generally said all of them went well or were like a moderate success with Malacia and Eriksen. This season, if you look at the transfers we've made, Mount has barely touched the field, and we paid 60 million or whatever it was for someone in the last year of their contract. Onana, 45 or whatever it was, he's basically cost us the Champions League and has been slightly dodgy in the league as well. Who else have we bought? I can't even think of who else we've bought. Like Højlund has obviously gone double 15 or 16 or whatever it was to score a Premier League goal. I've completely ignored Antony because he was a major flop from last season. So, like a lot of transfers he's got wrong. I would say he's got like maybe a 30% success rate, which generally is not good when you compare him with other big managers. You could probably say Klopp's got maybe a 65 to 70% success rate. Guardiola's got something similar. I think Arteta's probably been about 50-50. Generally, the big teams' managers, their success is defined on how well their transfers do. And if you look at Ange right now, high line for life and all that kind of stuff, generally all of his transfers have gone well. Maddison's been great. I think Van de Ven's been great. Vicario's been good.
He's got a lot more out of old Richarlison.
Yeah, I mean, and then beyond the transfers, obviously, what you get out of the existing players. I think generally Ten Hag, if you take Rashford aside, he hasn't really improved too many of our players. I guess you could say Luke Shaw played fairly well, but Luke Shaw's played well under Ollie. So, like when you compare with other managers, it's generally what they can get out of their new signings and what they can get out of these existing players that are within the squad. And I don't think he's done well enough at least this season. So that's changed a lot of people's perceptions of the players that we, brought through the doors last season. So I think it's normal. I think the only way that can change is when they come back. I think it's quite harsh because obviously a lot of those players have been injured this season. So I do think it's, not necessarily reflective of how good those players are. But based on the players we've bought this season, they've generally been pants. So if those players have been pants, it kind of just blankets all of the signings from last season and people have short memories and we'll go, Casemiro has been rubbish this season for 2 or 3 games. Forget about how he was last season. Lissandro, we talked about already, came back injured, did not play very well. Now suddenly he's rubbish or overrated. Eriksen, has been injured in and out of the team. Now suddenly he's finished. Malacia, I don't even know what's wrong with him. I don't know if anyone at the club knows where he is, what he's doing, but he's gone Thomas Partey missing. I don't know everyone's got this mystery around what's going on around him. And yeah, Antony's had his own dramas and been absolutely shit the rest of the time. So of course, you're then going to go, your transfers have been crap, mate. So I don't know. I think he's coming out just trying to defend his team, but yeah, he's played the wrong hand. He should have gone big on the injuries and get the violins out because that's at least legitimate. You see Lissandro come on the pitch for 20 minutes and it's a big difference. So imagine what it's going to be like when Lissandro's back for the rest of the games and Casemiro's back and we recover Luke Shaw and a few other players. Will be a different team. That's what he should have said. He should have said that instead of saying, people are treating him harshly based on the transfers and Antony's okay. No, mate. Concentrate on the injuries. That's what screwed us. And try and get the best out of the team once we get all the players back. But yeah, Ten Hag is...
Tired of ads interrupting your gripping investigations? Good news. Ad-free listening on Amazon Music is included with your Prime membership. Ads shouldn't be the scariest thing about true crime. Just head to amazon.com/ad-free true crime to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads. Enjoy thousands of Acast shows ad-free for Prime subscribers. Some shows may have ads.
Yeah. It's a little... To me, it always feels like a little bit bad when a manager comes out like massively trying to defend themselves and not necessarily always the team. And I don't mean to say that his kind of statement was not to defend the team. Maybe that was his intention, and maybe his ability to communicate is, in English at least, is just not there to be able to do that. But whenever you see a manager come out and make it about them, We saw it with Conte, we've seen it with Mourinho, we've seen it with plenty of managers coming out and kind of making it a little bit more about them and about their signings and about what they've done and about, their team selection. I tend to always feel like they're on the downward spiral of either losing it or just letting the pressure get to them and kind of just capitulating at some point in time. So from my point of view, I think Ten Hag needs to stay away from anything to do with him. He needs to stay away from any questions that specifically focus on his team selection or specifically focus on, his choices, and try to deflect around, some of the decisions that or the reasons why they were made. And as you kind of said, focus it more on the team. So when you're coming out to say, I think everyone said, our signings were great last season and now they say that they're crap. There is a better way in my mind, at least, to handle that from a communication standpoint. So generally speaking, I'd say to Erik Ten Hag, stay away from questions like that. Figure out, get a PR specialist to come in and train you, do whatever you've got to do, because at this point, those are the exact kind of traps that, unfortunately, journalists are going to have out for you, right? They're going to want to try and make it about you, because when it becomes about you, it's a lot easier to separate you from the team and a lot easier to get you sacked. And I'm not saying that journalists necessarily want to do that, but obviously they've got to have things to write about. And more managers getting sacked means more stories, more eyeballs for the most part. So, yeah, not the best, I guess, way of coming out and saying it. But I do agree with you. I think people are again, recency bias, man. They're just like looking at, okay, the last 4 months haven't been great for some of these players, either through injury or some performances or both. And just completely forgetting about what you guys did last year, which I think was a massive, in my mind, an overperformance, right? Like I don't know if anybody was expecting you to do that. So again, we just need to keep it a bit more balanced in the conversation and try not to go so deep on one side of the extreme that, Ten Hag doesn't know how to make any decisions now, but last season he was making all of them right? We need to try and think about the long term a little bit more. And I guess speaking of that, something that I've seen on some other Man United content creators' channels is they're immediately talking about Sancho. Right, obviously there's been some funny stuff come out recently. There was, I think, one guy in the background of a Sancho clip shouting at him, saying like, I can't remember what it was, but it was like, have you spoken to Ten Hag, you lazy F word? Right, like shouting this at him on his debut, or I guess his second debut for Dortmund. He obviously came out with an assist. So everyone's starting the bandwagon of like, oh, it's all Ten Hag's fault, and Sancho's going to be class for Dortmund now. And there's kind of a split in the fan base, and some questions already coming up about, would you have Sancho back at United at some point in the future, right? And I saw a conversation happen basically saying, there might be a point in time where Ten Hag is no longer there and Sancho is able to come back and kind of save face a little bit. So adding that onto Ralph Rangnick's statement recently coming out saying that Jadon Sancho, had zero attitude problems when he was there and was kind of essentially a consummate professional. What do you kind of make of the whole saga? And I guess two questions. Would you ever have him back at Man United? And do you think it's a Ten Hag thing that has changed the way that Sancho has kind of behaved or played?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty ridiculous. But I mean, I've seen probably some of the same content creators you're referring to talk about this Sancho saga, and they've been very clearly on Sancho's. Like, I don't believe there should be sides, because we all support Man United, so everyone should just support what's best for the club. But I do think a lot of people have gone, we're going to support Sancho, and they're going to ride or die, and that's what it is. But I think it's quite straightforward. Maybe Sancho doesn't fundamentally have an attitude problem. Maybe it's a combination of things that have happened while he's been there under Ten Hag. So maybe it's a result of, the fact that Ten Hag has been playing Antony week in, week out, and he's been playing poor, and Jadon Sancho hasn't reacted well to that, and then that's caused him to miss training or be late or not hit the levels maybe that Ten Hag's been asking for. And I do think that's probably somewhere where the truth lies, because there's some people out there that say, Sancho's done no wrong. He's just been reacting to everything Ten Hag's been doing. Ten Hag is the one who's this unfair taskmaster, and he's out of his depth and all this kind of stuff, and Sancho's done no wrong, and basically just blindly backing Sancho because he was a prospect and because we've chased him for a couple of years before getting him. But there are also people, obviously, who go, Sancho's lazy, he's not working, he's not worked hard. The media have pushed this narrative as well that he's had this problem following him when he was with Pep, when he was at Dortmund, when he's been with England with Southgate. And I think the truth probably lies in the middle. So I feel like if you treat Sancho well and you give him a chance and don't have your favourites, he probably won't behave this way. And he will probably come to training on time, like Ralph Rangnick said, and have zero attitude problems. I'm sure he's capable of behaving in that way. But if you don't, or you're harsh on him, or you're strict on him, which I believe Ten Hag has been, he's very susceptible to throwing his toys out the pram. And I believe the same thing happened at Dortmund. And the cause of some of his problems at Dortmund was, I think it was around about the time we were in for him a year before we ended up buying him. And he was unhappy at not being able to get the move, and he started turning up late to training. He started behaving in the same kind of ways. So I just think the truth is he's quite a temperamental player, and Ten Hag's management style doesn't mesh well with him. And because of that, he's behaved in the way that he has. And that's probably why Ralph Rangnick has come out and said that, because I don't think Ralph managed in the same way. I think it was quite obvious he was like an interim substitute teacher while he was at the club. So I don't believe any player's going to, potentially react terribly to him. So I don't think he's a fair reflection or, a good character witness for Jadon Sancho, considering he's there for such a short time. And it was pretty obvious from the beginning that he wasn't going to be there long term. But that's no slight on him, because I really rate Ralph Rangnick, and I still believe he should probably be at the club right now helping us, because I believe from a club building perspective, he's top class. And we probably wouldn't be in these problems if he was somewhat involved and given, enough power to affect the change at the club. But yeah, the Sancho stuff, it's just a circus, man. It's just a circus. Now every time he does anything in Dortmund, this conversation's gonna come up again. And we're going to Dortmund in a couple of weeks' time, and I'm sure we'll see him ball out. He'll probably come out with some assists or score some goals, because he's a good player. And Dortmund are a good team. And they're generally one of the top 3 teams in Germany, so they win most of their games. There's quite a big disparity between Bayern, Dortmund, and this season, Leverkusen. So I don't think that's a fair reflection of Sancho either. He was able to ball out before we bought him as well. That made no impact on how he performed in the Premier League. So I think you just got to look at things logically and not come in with any sort of bias that I'm Team Jadon or I'm Team Erik ten Hag. Every fan should be Team Man United. I don't care about individuals in this perspective. I'm not celebrating seeing Sancho leave. I wouldn't celebrate Sancho staying the same way I wouldn't celebrate Ten Hag leaving or celebrate Ten Hag staying. As long as the team performs well and the team performs and achieves the targets that we're looking to try and hit, I don't really care. I'm not about to get involved in all of this this rubbish that people are getting on.
Would I also then assume that, if Sancho were to come back in the future, that you would be indifferent to that as well? Or do you think it's kind of got to be the end for him now at Man United at least?
It's not even indifference. It's like, sure, if he comes back and he plays well, I'll support him. Even if he comes back and he shows the right attitude, he's not playing well, I'll support him as well. It's not about just not caring. It's just about what's best for the team. But I would imagine if Ten Hag's still here, he won't get a chance to come back, because that relationship's completely destroyed. And clearly they can't work with each other. If Ten Hag's not around and another manager's there and they manage to work well together, then of course I'll be happy for Sancho to come back. I don't believe he's disrespected the club in this saga, by the way. I believe it's very personal between the two of them. Ten Hag said something about him. I don't believe that was the worst thing in the world. A lot of people are out here saying what Ten Hag did was throw him under the bus. I think they're talking Pochettino's done the same recently. Klopp's done the same. Pep's done the same. He's called Calvin Phillips, Five Guys' favorite customer. Said he's a fat boy who loves eating burgers all the time. Like no one hammers him for that. That's actually harsh. All Ten Hag said was he wasn't training well. Poch said it about Madueke. Lots of people have said it. I don't think that's harsh, but clearly that's not the full story, is it? There's something deeper going on between the two of them, and that's why Sancho's reacted the way he has. So I just think that relationship's destroyed. So I don't believe it will work. Maybe they can reconcile. I don't know. But my money, if I was a betting man, would be on Sancho only having a United career if Ten Hag leaves. And if Ten Hag's still there, I think that means Sancho's gone either on another loan or we'll sell him at the end of the season. So it's just about whatever's best for United. So if a new manager comes in, then I think he should be given another chance because I don't believe he's done anything to Man United. I think fans saying that are being unfair on him. But at the same time, I think fans backing him are maybe not being totally honest about the situation.
And for all the listeners, that's a cat, by the way. That's not like it's not like a baby screaming or anything. That's just a playful cat in the background, lads. All right. Well, I think again, I'm kind of just generally sick of seeing Sancho's name. I do hope he balls out in Dortmund, but I'm hoping that there's not just going to be just endless rubbish in terms of content and tweets and whatever else about, it's all Ten Hag's fault and whatever else. I'm hoping that, people can just give him some privacy to just go and play well in Germany and just leave him alone. Which I think there's a slight chance that can happen, because if you look at Kane, we're getting very little Kane stuff coming up now in England anymore, right? And obviously it's a little bit different when it's Man United because you guys, it's a machine at this point in terms of the media. So I'm sure there will be something, but it would be good to just kind of not hear about it and just let everyone kind of get on with what they've got to do for the next few, at least for the next few months. I don't want to be hearing Sancho's name every bloody week.
Yeah, it's tiring. And but before we end the Man U segment, because I know we're going to wrap up now and move on to the other segments, I just want to have one last little time to speak about McTominay, because we didn't really talk about him in this game. Yeah?
All right, everyone.
Clip it up. Here we go. McTominay rant incoming, yeah? Because, like I mentioned earlier, some people were, not necessarily happy with me mentioning the fact that McTominay is not really helpful to our system, or calling out potentially that he's a player that needs to leave. I think today's game is the perfect example. If we use him, this will be the way that we use him, but eventually this McSauce thing is going to run out. Like, he's not always going to score goals because he's not bloody Haaland, right? So he's not going to score every chance that he gets. But for him to be useful to the team, he basically needs to have impact at least 7, 8 times out of 10, whether it's from the start or from the bench, because he does nothing else in the game. So if you can, anyone that's watching this pod that wants to comment and get on to me like they did last time about, McTominay, and say, but he scored a goal against Brentford, 2 goals against Brentford, and he scored a goal against Chelsea, and, he scored a goal against one other team. Please tell me anything else that he did in that game. If I check the stats, and I'm not that bothered to check the stats, but I will be if people comment again, right, and get on my about this. If they do, then I'm going to go and check, FB ref or whatever, and check how many times he touched the ball, how much influence he had on the game in 25, 30, 40 minutes or whatever he had of the game. He was basically invisible in the whole game, and he's basically always invisible, except for the few times that he scores. Today he had a chance and he missed it. I'm going to guarantee you there's more times in the future where he's going to miss them. Of course, there'll be times where he scores as well. But for him to be useful to our team, he needs to pretty much score nearly every chance that he gets, because he doesn't do anything else when he's on the pitch. And I'm praying that next week we'll see a double pivot like you mentioned, Casemiro and Mainu with Bruno ahead. Because, this is something that's never talked about. People always get onto Bruno for his output and the fact that he's still a whinger, but his output's dropped. McTominay affects Bruno's output, because Bruno has to sacrifice and start dropping deeper because he knows this guy's a hologram and he's not involved in the game. So if you were to kick McTominay out of the team, put 2 more stable, defensively minded midfielders behind Bruno, I bet you everything that I own that Bruno's output with the goals and assists will go up massively. So it's hurting our team. So McSauce out, please. And yeah, we'll talk about it under the comments if you disagree. But that's the last part I wanted to get in there, because it infuriates me. He scores one goal and everyone's like, McSauce, you can't say anything bad about him. But trust me, you can. He plays poorly enough that you can say a lot of things about McTominay and critique his game. It's not the way forward for Man United. He's either a fringe player or you get rid of him.
Gotcha. No, I saw that coming. As soon as he missed that header, I could feel something coming. So I'm glad that you got that out of your system.
Ripples in the universe. You could feel the ripples in the universe. Yeah, I was steaming. What a
yeah, my ears started burning. Everything started going wrong. As soon as I saw that happen, I was thinking, yeah, Ants is going to be off on one. But anyway, let's get into just a quick preview of next week, or I guess next weekend. So we've got only one match really to preview, and that's for my team this time. And so Arsenal, I believe, are playing Crystal Palace at home on, I think it's on Saturday. I think it's a Saturday kickoff at about 5:30, right?
Yeah.
So obviously, it's been a little bit of time. We've seen now Arteta in Dubai. Yeah, it's been a little bit of time. Yeah, I've had some rest and exactly. Yeah, I've seen now Arteta out in Dubai getting a tomahawk steak and all that. Yeah. So obviously, yeah, this is a good opportunity for us to kind of break this terrible streak that we're on at the moment. Our past results against Crystal Palace have not been too bad, so I am hoping for the best. But Ant, what do you think? What do you think in terms of this game? What are you thinking might happen? Obviously, Crystal Palace have lost a few people to AFCON as well. So, what do you expect from this game?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think when it comes to the form table, I think both teams are not doing fantastic. I think Palace have also not been getting the greatest results ever. And you guys are at the lowest ebb you guys have had for probably like a season and a half when it comes to results and general vibe around Arsenal. Like the judges, Turkish, everyone's losing their mind at AFTV. So that's normally a sign of bad times for you guys. I would expect you to win. I can't see any reason why Crystal Palace will be a difficult team for you to play, other than the fact they're going to play a bit of a low block, and you've sometimes had some trouble with that. And
quite physical as well.
Yeah, they're a pretty physical team. They're not quite Fulham, but they stick it on you. So I can see it being a bit of a battle. But I don't think you'll struggle too much. I think you'll win, but it'll be pretty close because Palace, they work really hard, and good old Roy has them playing a real honest style of football. It's not the greatest to watch, but it suits a lot of their players' strengths. So I think you guys will win, but I'm going to go for a 2-1 Arsenal. I think they'll probably score. I wouldn't be shocked if they scored early or scored first and you guys had to come back. But I think the resilience that you've maybe been missing in some of your last fixtures, I think you'll be able to show in this game and bounce back. But yeah, I will touch on that Arteta getting, going to Nusret or whatever. That's a stinker, by the way.
Yeah, no, we're gonna leave that for a little bit later because
that content needs to come off the internet.
I'm not ready yet. All right. But actually, yeah, you've mirrored kind of the same score that I was going for. So I think just based off the fact that they do play quite physical football, they do play a relatively low block, but they also have players like Elise. They've got players like Eze. They've got players that are good quality on the ball. They've also got like even defenders that can play forward. Anderson maybe not having in the best of form right now, but we've seen him play well before. We've seen obviously Guehi's a good player too. So I think from that point of view, I don't see us keeping a clean sheet just because we can't seem to do that recently. And then I don't see us going and smashing them off the park with 5 goals or something like that. So I'm also going to go for a 2-1 home win. I'm hoping, we'll slowly get out of this. If we came out and smashed them 5-1, I wouldn't even trust it. I'd just be like, all right, this is a one-off. I want to see some gritty play again. I want to see some style. I want to see a good team selection, and I want to see us kind of dominate the ball. Ideally, don't let a goal in, but I do think we'll probably win it 2-1. I really don't think, though, if they do get the first goal, I don't see us winning it. I don't know what's happened to us recently in that regard, but if they get the first goal, I think we lose. So I'm thinking we go 2-0 up and then they get one back late and it gets squeaky at the end as we've done many times already this season. So I guess that's what we'll wrap up the preview. But obviously, Ant, you want to now talk about Nusret and that Don that just seems to get himself on the bloody World Cup final pitches and Champions League final pitches somehow all the time.
Oh man,
go on, get it out then. What do you want to say?
Honestly, that Arsenal need to like literally like serve him a cease and desist letter to get that content off the internet. You can't have your manager being fed, steak off a knife from that guy. Like you guys really didn't need any more bad looks or like some dodgy PR at the moment. You need to be doing that kind of stuff fresh after you've won a cup or a league or had like a really good performance. You can't be going to Dubai getting fed $1,000 steaks off a big massive sword by a tiny looking Turkish dude. It's just a terrible look, man. He's had a stinker, Arteta. But I guess it's probably better than if his wife or one of his children had been eating the steak from Nusret. So he probably took one for the team. But yeah, you guys, Arteta and Poch, you're not doing well for London this week. You've had stinkers,
mate. Yeah, it wasn't the best thing for me to see. It's not. In the midst of it all, I wanted to go quiet. I just wanted to go quiet. I want there to be no news, nothing happening. I want all of our players to stay in their houses until we play our next match and win. So seeing it obviously was, God, I just knew what was going to happen after that. But I guess from my point of view, if he does that and then we go and win, I don't give a toss. Yeah, if he does that and then he chooses a stupid team again and we get beat, I'm going to be livid. All right. And then next week I'll come on here and I'll give him what's what, because you've got to have some supreme confidence to be doing that in the middle of all of this, man. Or you just got to be completely unaware of life and social media and all the stuff that goes on today. So from that point of view, Arteta, mate, there's a lot on the line against Crystal Palace. You better win that. Otherwise, there's going to be some real issues. All right. All right. Anyway, let's go and talk about some transfers. It is, after all, January, and it won't be January forever. And we've got two teams that tend to be linked with bloody everybody. So we'll start out with United first. We kind of touched on Sancho. He's obviously gone out. Hannibal, it looks like he's going to Sevilla. And I can't remember his first name, but Fernandez, who was like one of your youth prospects,
Alvaro,
I think.
Alvaro.
Alvaro Fernandez looks like he's going to be going to Benfica. Is that a loan, or are these all loans, or what?
Mate, I'll tell you, I'm more livid about these bits of news than the result and the performance against Spurs today. Not necessarily with Sancho one, we won't talk about that too much more. But I'm absolutely devastated we're letting go of Hannibal, and I understand that's a loan with a buy option, but we've got a buyback clause to bring him back after that. But he's got a place in our squad. This is what I mean about flipping McSauce that I talked about earlier. Why don't you bloody loan McSauce to Hannibal? Do they? To Sevilla. Do they want him? I love that. That would be fantastic. Get him out. Bring Hannibal on. He's got a bit of bite. I think that stat we had earlier on the season, we covered more ground than anyone in United had for the last 5 years or something. Why are we getting rid of players that work hard and show dedication to the team? I really can't understand it. It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. So I'm absolutely gutted about us potentially loaning and selling him, even if we've got a buyback. I bet you the loan, the buy option for Sevilla is probably something ridiculous like 10 million, and the buyback afterwards is probably something crazy like 40 million or 50 million or something like that. So yeah, I'm not chuffed about that. I'll leave the door slightly ajar if there is a good buyback clause or whatever, and things are reasonable and it looks like a decent piece of business. But it looks like we're just trying to balance the books with that one. So I was really sad to see bloody Fabrizio Romano's "here we go" on that deal. That really made me upset. And then the Alvaro Fernandez one, I just don't understand why we have this system where we buy these good youth prospects, train them up. They always show a bit of prospect and they look like they're actually going to turn into decent professionals, or, in Hannibal's case, actually fill a place in our squad, and then we sell them. So a good example is Luke Shaw's absolutely injury prone. He's always got a problem. and I know it's not necessarily his fault. Some of the time it's to do with that metal plate that's in his leg from when he broke his leg that time. So I'm not blaming him whatsoever, right? I'm not going to do a rants and bants and talk about him being fat and loving burgers and all that kind of stuff, right? I feel like he's actually got a legitimate reason why he's got injury problems and he's going to have flare-ups because of the metal plate in his leg. But now it looks like Malacia is quite injury prone as well. He's missed all of this season. He missed a chunk of last season. It makes sense that we keep a young up and coming player on our books, whether it's loaning them out but having a break clause where you can bring them back if we need them, like Liverpool have done with that Owen Beck lad that they loaned up in Scotland. Why are we trying to sell him? Like, as far as I know, the Fernandes deal was to sell him to Benfica. No talk of a buyback clause. We might now be loaning him with a buy option for them to buy. Either way, why get rid of these young players that are showing promise? He's been doing really well in Spain, apparently. I think he's at Almeria or Granada or something like that. Like, why are we doing these deals? It just smacks of us trying to make a bit of money when there are actually sellable players that are, in our first team squad that we could make more money back from, like Maguire's, like McTominay's, but yet we're choosing to keep them. So that really upset me when I saw these deals selling all these young players with promise, because we've talked about it before on the pod. I would rather keep and play the young players than some of our overpaid, diva players that we've got in our first team squad. So selling them it looks like we're doing things backwards. So I'm not happy about that at all, to be honest, mate.
Especially in the environment. Obviously, watched the game yesterday. Bloody Oscar Bob coming and scoring a really good goal off of a really good De Bruyne assist. Add to that, obviously, Cole Palmer kind of like being the best part of Chelsea right now.
Yeah, exactly.
It's you see both sides of the coin, right? Like, what you could be doing with these young players is actually playing them, developing them, and filling in, as you said, gaps in your squad with somebody that has potential, somebody that can improve a lot quicker than some of the players in your team who are kind of set in their ways. So from that perspective, it doesn't make any sense. But then from the other perspective, like the Cole Palmer type thing is, are you going to rue the day that you get rid of some of these players, right? Even if it's a loan to buy option and whatever else, are you going to rue the day that you get rid of a Hannibal or a Fernandes when you haven't really got that much quality depth in the positions that you're talking about, right? Like, Malacia is good. Luke Shaw is obviously really good. But as you say, they're both pretty injury prone at this point. And you don't want to be stuck in the position where you've got to get bloody Reguilon on a short-term loan, or you've got to get Dello and stick him on the left every single time, right? Like, there's got to be, in my mind, like a slightly better squad planning. And I don't see, because you're not getting a lot of money for these players, generally speaking, right? It's different if it's like James Trafford type deal, where it's like you get loads more money than you actually value him at. You end up getting kind of ripped off every single time. So from that point of view, it's like, Ineos must not be in yet, right? Like they clearly must not be fully in charge of the transfers yet, because that I get the Sancho one, but the Hannibal and the Fernandes one don't make any sense to me at all.
They're absolutely bonkers. And I'll end this last point on the transfers out potentially, just with saying, who of our two best players or who've been given the best performances over the last couple of months when things have really got sticky? It's been Garnacho and it's been Kobe Mainu. So those are youth products. So I don't understand. If we had Chelsea 04, 05 under Mourinho with, a bunch of senior pros that were at the top of their game, like at a world-class level, or if not, one of the 15 best players in their position, then I get selling young players. I even understand what Mourinho did in the second stint, having to sell Salah and KDB and, Lukaku and all these players. I don't blame him, because he had like a really good first 11. He was never going to play them. But in our position, we don't have a really good first 11. We have a lot of gaps in our team where if a young player performs well enough, like Garnacho and Mainu has proven, they can get a chance in the team. So the squad planning stinks. If Ineos are in, and this is something that they've signed off on, it's not really the greatest start, is it? It's a bit of a bloody worrying omen if they've signed off on these deals.
Yeah, and I think another thing is, when we look at the best managers in the world, I'm not including any Real Madrid managers in there, because they just buy anytime they need someone. They just buy someone, right? But even they've got a good youth system, right? They've got players that they end up bringing through the ranks. But if you look at the best managers, if you look at Pep, if you look at Klopp, they've both proven that they can move from phases in the squad and they can be a long-term manager. It's probably one of the slights I'd have against a manager like Mourinho, right? Is that he could always do it when he had a really good team, right? Or he could build a pretty good team in a quick space of time with good signings and then dominate with them. But he never really showed the ability to go one step further, have that awkward transition period and then rebuild something great again, right? It looks like Klopp is kind of in the middle of trying to do that with Liverpool right now. He had obviously a really good period, a really good squad. He balls that up somehow. And then he's had that awkward transition of last season, and now he's trying to build something back up again with kind of young-ish signings, trying to play some of the youth players in his team. Pep kind of does it as well. He's a bit more harsh about it, but you see Oscar Bob coming on and making a difference for them, right? You see Rico Lewis, you see players in that squad that are youth prospects or from the academy. So if Ten Hag wants to prove himself, and I would say this to Arteta as well, right? In order to prove yourself as a long-term manager, you need to be able to have youth development in your team. I need to be able to see you take youth players and make them great and make them part of your team. And if Ten Hag has had any input on getting rid of Hannibal and getting rid of Fernandes, that also feels like a bad omen to me as well, right? Because he continues, as you say, he keeps playing bloody McTominay. He keeps playing some of these players that are seen to be young but actually quite old now and probably you should be getting rid of. He keeps playing them and not necessarily always giving a chance to the young players in his team, right? Hannibal, I can't think of a really terrible performance he's had for you guys, right? Even coming on as a sub, he hasn't been terrible at all. And yet you're getting rid of him. Mainu obviously hasn't been terrible. He's been pretty good for you guys. It looks like he'll get a run. But when Casemiro gets back and you start seeing McTominay play over him, then you got issues again. So I think from Ten Hag's perspective, I need to be seeing him doing something with the youth and building something with the youth, like with Garnacho and whoever else. Because if he's not doing that, I don't see him being successful long term. Because I really do believe that is a critical part of being a long term kind of project type, Sir Alex Ferguson, Wenger type manager.
Yeah, but Johnson is like, he can't have it both ways. He can't have everyone not criticize and analyze his signings if he's choosing to go that route and he's choosing to sell a lot of his young players and go the big signing route or, bring in players via the transfer market. That's going to come. He either decides that he's going to promote youth and then mix that with a blend of class signings that he brings in. And then I understand why he would say, look, you need to ease up off my signings and you need to, look at me. I'm working with the youth as well. My plan is not just based on bringing players in for, a gajillion pounds. But it's not. He's selling a lot. These aren't the only youth players who've been sold. James Garner was sold in his first summer at the club. Zidane Iqbal was sold, I think, in the January of last year. Or I think it was even in the summer, actually. So we're selling a lot of youth prospects, and the signings he's bringing in are struggling. Or you could say it's, less than a 50% success rate. So, yeah, man, the jury's out. Let's hope these youth prospect sales don't come back to bite us in the ass, because I can tell you what, I would have much preferred Hannibal coming on instead of McTominay today.
Exactly. I think you're definitely right. Like you can't have it both ways. Ideally, from a manager, I think I would like to see a little bit of both, though. I would like to kind of, I hate to say this as well, but like kind of the way that Klopp does it, right, is he promotes youth, he plays them, they get better. You've got people like Trent in that team who, kind of carry them at points. And then he also, on top of that, gets some decent signings in that kind of develop as well. And then you kind of got a nice mix of both of them. And I think with Arteta, at least, that's something that I've kind of seen from him so far. The jury's still out on the signings part, but on the youth part, he's obviously done a really good job of players like Saka, Martinelli, making them better. So I think from that point of view, I'd like to see a little bit of both. And I think Ten Hag probably should look at both avenues, and I hope he does. I'm not sure about his history at Ajax. Maybe he did that. Maybe he's just not doing it at United. But I'd like to see him invest a little bit more in the youth, because Man United have historically always had a really good academy. Maybe not so much recently because you haven't invested in facilities and whatever else, and because the noisy neighbours are about now. But I would want to see Man United have at least 2-3 players that came from their youth team in their starting 11. You know what I mean?
And I think we do, though. I think we might be going a bit overboard, though, because I'm just thinking about it now. We've obviously got Rashford in the team. He's a youth team player. We've got now Mainu and Garnacho in there, so that's 3. Arteta's brought through Martinelli, Saka, Smith Rowe's not really getting a run out, but let's also say, and he's decided to hold on to some of his youth team players who he's brought through, like the
Reece Nelson,
and you can see two very different approaches, because Ten Hag's selling a lot of the youth team players that he thinks is not up to scratch clearly, and you could argue Arteta's keeping some of those players and showing belief in them. Let's look at what the Arsenal fans say. A lot of Arsenal fans, maybe not you, Johns, but a lot of Arsenal fans say, sell Nketiah, sell Reece Nelson, get someone better in. So what are we asking for? Are we asking for them to stand by these players the way Arteta is? But then when things get a little bit dodgy, you say sell them and bring someone world classes. Let's just see how it goes for Ten Hag. He's chosen to sell them, so now he's got to replace them with better players that are going to help us grow. And maybe we'll see the same of Arteta. Who knows? In the summer, he might decide to sell Nketiah, and might decide to sell Nelson, and then he's going to have to replace them. So, let's see how it goes. It's just, it doesn't feel good, because I really had some... it's quite different in that Nketiah, I think, and Nelson have maybe, to a less extent, have proven maybe that they're not up to scratch. I don't believe Hannibal and Fernandes definitely have had a chance.
They've been given a much longer run of play, and I think that's part of the reason you're talking about with Arsenal fans have kind of said, all right, I've seen enough of this guy now, fair enough, get rid of him because he's not good enough. But I think, as you said, with Hannibal, with Fernandes, I don't think I've seen Fernandes on the pitch once. I'm sure he's been on it once.
He hasn't played for us.
I've never actually seen him.
Bench,
I've seen Hannibal maybe 4 or 5 cameos off the bench. I don't think I've ever seen him start. He probably has, though, but I don't remember it. You haven't really given them enough time, even with Mainu, right? Like, had you not had all these injuries, had you not had all these problems, I don't know if you're going to give him a run out. And that's where I'm even saying to you, like, with Casemiro back in it, if I see Casemiro come back and then I see a double pivot or a single pivot with bloody McTominay in front of him, then man, you like there's a problem there, because you've given Mainu a run out. He's been good. So if you're then reverting back to McTominay now, then there's a problem there, right? And I think that's where I'd say is the thing to watch out on. Is like, I don't mind if you want to go for a different style and you want to buy players that are good instead of like investing in your youth, even though I would prefer that. But you can't be keeping the dead wood. Like even if you've got McTominay, Rashford, Garnacho, and all that in there, Rashford's proven he belongs in a team. Fair enough. Garnacho seems to have proven that he belongs in your team. Mainu's getting close there, right? Like, give him a few more months, and I think he could get there, right? McTominay's a youth player too, and he's proven he stinks, and you keep playing him. So, it's weird how he's choosing what youth or what kind of Man United through and through players to play in his team. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, let's see, man. I'm at this moment, I don't get a good feeling seeing those players leave. Right, there's some players who I've been kind of agnostic to leaving. Those ones, like I just really believe we could have used them in the squad, and it just I think it proves maybe the point we were talking about earlier. A lot of United fans' confidence in Ten Hag's transfer dealings has dropped to the floor. Like, a lot of us are starting to question things and are getting a little bit twitchy. So let's hope they turn out okay. But at the moment, I've got serious worries about some of these deals we're doing.
And the last thing I'll say on it is when you are loaning them to teams like Benfica and Sevilla and Dortmund, who typically pick players up and then turn them into absolute stars and then rinse them for like 100 mil to United or to somebody else, that's a bad sign. If you're sending them to Newport County, or if you're sending them to someone crap, no offense, Newport County, but if you're sending them to someone crap, then fine, right? No one else wanted them, whatever. But you're sending them to Benfica, you're sending them to Sevilla and Dortmund. These are like 3 notorious teams for like being able to offload players that they've bought cheaply for hundreds of mils. So bad sign there. But that's the last I'll say on that. I think the next thing.
Man. I agree with you completely. Like, I forgot to mention, Ted Mengi is another good example. We sold him to Luton for like $1 million. He's played about 5 or 6 games now for them, and there's rumours of Luton selling him next season to Villas and Everton's and Spurs for like 20 million. So, it just goes to show you know, we are just proven to be absolutely abysmal when it comes to selling players. And yeah, you make a really good point. When I'm looking now at our, you know, episode outline sheet, Dortmund, Sevilla, Benfica, if there were 3 teams in Europe that were better at spotting talent than them, I'm gonna need you to tell me, because those guys go and buy the best young players in the world, and like you said, flog them for like 100+ million. So as soon as they show an interest in my players, I might just say, you know what, I'm going to keep them because they're obviously pretty decent. Exactly.
You can take McTominay, but I'm keeping them.
Take McTominay. I'll say you like on FIFA. You know when someone comes in to try buy one of your good players, and you say no, here's Jed Spence or something like that. You try and flog one of your worst players. Like that's what I'd be doing. Like you want Hannibal? Sorry, you can get McTominay, and you pay me 40 million. That's what I do.
It's about time we rinse the other way around, right?
Exactly. We need to start. Yeah,
everyone else. All right, but very quickly, I've seen some rumors about Guirassy, obviously Choupo-Moting and Elise. We kind of talked on Elise previously, but what do you make of the whole Guirassy rumors? Do you see that being true? Do you see that maybe coming true in the summer, or do you think that's just one of those rumors that's just going around but has no kind of real backing to it?
So I think the Guirassy one and or the Choupo-Moting one, the kind of older, more experienced striker, could happen if we got rid of Martial. I think Martial's made clear he doesn't want to leave now, so I don't think those deals are going to happen in January. I think in the summer, more likely, I think we'll go and get a different striker because we'll have more time to have scouted, you know, a proper person to fit that role. I feel like a Guirassy Choupo-Moting one was kind of like just a bit of a short-term fix, a bit Weghorst-y, a bit Igalo-y, you know what I mean? And I don't think we'll do that in the summer if we have a bit more time. Guirassy, that might be one that we do in the summer, but you have to keep banging in goals because he doesn't have enough evidence behind him, stats behind him to prove he'd be a good signing just yet. He'd need to really prove it for at least one season in Stuttgart. So let's see. I don't think any of those are happening. I'd be shocked if we got anyone in this transfer window because more likely than not, we're going to be loaning players out because we're getting so many players back from injury. So yeah, I don't think any of those are on the cards.
Yeah, I think I do think it would be probably prudent of you to do so, though, because obviously Martial, as much as he says he doesn't want to leave, is a hologram in your squad, essentially, right? It may not be a hologram on the pitch, but he's a hologram in your squad because he's very rarely fit to actually play. I think the jury's out on I guess Højlund in that sense that like he did come with an injury. He doesn't look like, you know, he's going to get injured again. He seems like he's built, you know, of the strong stuff. But if you lose the you know, let's say Højlund goes down injured, you're in a pretty bad position because you're relying on Martial stinks. And then Rashford's clearly said he doesn't ever look like he ever wants to play striker. So I do feel like you could do with maybe something in that kind of striking region just as a backup. Maybe Guirassy's probably a bit too good now, at least with, you know, what's going on at Stuttgart right now. His goal record's pretty nuts. But I could see like a Choupo-Moting coming in on loan just in case because it is perilous to be relying on Martial as your backup striker with a 20-year-old kind of not unproven, but a 20-year-old striker in front of him who could get injured in the future.
No, that's way too logical, Johns. That's not how it's going to work out. That all makes complete sense. But we're going to go with what we have, and he's going to play Rashford up front as a backup third option. That's what's going to happen. I'm telling you. I agree with you completely, but that's not what he's going to do. We've seen him do it already this season. He's gonna plow ahead with Rashford up front, and he's gonna do all, and we'll probably lose those games when he plays up front. But that's what we're gonna do. I don't see them coming in. It's just
all right. Well, the defeatist mindset. All right, let's go to Arsenal now. I'll be honest with you, I haven't been as kind of tapped in with the Arsenal transfer rumors as I probably should be. Mainly just because they bother me. Just like I hate hearing about these random players that we're going to be buying, and then the big rumors come out about us buying Tony or Solanke or whatever, and then it never happens. So I haven't been tapped into them, but I have heard obviously Borja Mayoral, I don't know how you say his name, but he looks like he might be an option for us. I think he's 26. You've told me he's a former wonder kid. Looks like he's doing all right now at Getafe. Can't say I've got any interest in that at all, mate. When I saw that name come up, I was just like, all right, let's move on now because It's not doing it for me, mate. It's not getting my juices flowing. And I figure, like, what if you're going to buy that guy? Why not just keep the money and keep whoever you've got right now? Because I very much doubt he's going to be a better option than, I don't know, just playing Trossard up front. Or I've even seen rumours of just like sticking Martinelli striker. I'm just saying, like, if you're not going to markedly improve the team, sack it off. No need for it.
Yeah, man. I have to be honest. This is such a weird left field one that it might be true. Because all the chats Solanke, all the chats Tony, all the chats, I don't know, some really delusional dons talking about Osman and all these kind of things. But yeah, when I saw this Borja Mayoral deal, I was like, this is so weird that it's either purely like paper talk, absolute gas, or he's like some guy that Arteta's been tracking since he's like 16 and really wants him. Like, there's either those
exactly.
are
The fact that he's Spanish worries me. The fact that he's Spanish worries me.
That's who he wanted.
He's got his bloody beady eyes and his Lego head in Getafe somewhere before he went to Dubai. Had a little look, had a little conversation, and now we're going to buy some random don that I've never heard of before.
It could happen. It could happen. I think it would be, honestly, it's one of those transfers as well. If it does happen, it's complete 50-50. It's either going to be a masterstroke and it helps you guys, either get close to a title or win it because he comes in and just exceeds any kind of expectation you have, and he's a proper striker and he offers you something you don't have, or it's a complete bust Kim Karlstrom type January signing, which you don't see any value in kind of doing. The only thing I will say, Trossard came in last season in January as a relatively cheaper option to like a big glitzy signing because you guys all wanted
like a Mudryk.
And he did all right. And I feel like he's been a decent signing who's come in and he offers something every time he plays. So you never know. Maybe don't get too down on it, but I get you. It's not a sexy signing, right? You see that and you don't go, ooh, that's going to change our
exactly.
fortunes. You kind of just see it and go, I don't know, man. I'm going to have to research this guy on YouTube.
I'm going to have to watch some compilations.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
given the fact that I've never heard of him before, I feel like that's going to be quite difficult to find. So, even with the Trossard signing last season, right? Like, he's coming from Brighton, who were a high performance team at the time. I think they're still good this season. No offense to them, but like, it wasn't like so crazy to me because obviously Trossard was one of their better players. Him and Matoma, they were really good last season. So to see that signing for 28 million, especially when we missed out on Mudryk, I was like, all right, fine. But like, if Mayoral is the signing that we get, who was number one? Tell me who we missed out on that we ended up with this guy? Because if he's
Tony.
first choice, we've got some problems.
It's got to be Tony. I reckon maybe you were interested in Tony and you were expecting him to be a bit more open to leaving, but he obviously came out and did that interview where he said he owes Brentford one and blah, 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 he won't leave them. And now he's had to look elsewhere. Like, otherwise, this is completely made up and there is no target. Like, those are the only two ways I can see it going. Like, it's complete lies. There is no striker target. You've got no money, or you've got FFP problems, which I think is pretty realistic considering you had to loan to buy Raya, and there is no target. Or you actually have got some money that you found at the back of the couch, and you wanted Tony, but he's suddenly just done a U-turn on you and said he wants to stay loyal.
Or you had some money, you just didn't have 100 million or whatever they're asking for. So
maybe.
But again, Mayoral's fine if you make that signing on deadline day, and I've never heard of him before that point. But if we're getting linked with him on the 14th of January, I've got big problems, right? Just don't buy anyone if that's what we're going for, all right? I don't need another geezer in the squad that I'm going to have to, it's like a Cedric. I don't need this Don in my team. Just get him out, and instead just don't bring him in. Simple. Just keep your existing team instead of getting that crap in. No offense to him, but
very harsh.
No, we're not
Poor old
doing that. No, I'm not doing that, mate. Stick in Getafe, you'll do well there, son. It's your level. But anyway, other than that, Tony Solanke, still don't really know what's going on with that. Trying to keep out of it at this point. As you said, I did see something also about Arteta coming out and basically saying that it doesn't look like we're going to have funds to go for a big striker. I think he was asked point blank, like, are you looking at a striker? And I think he just said, like, financially, it doesn't look like we're going to be able to get one. So if that's what's happening, then fine. But then don't go and get desperate and get this done, because he's financially going to have some burden on us as well. And what's the
Yeah,
point?
true.
Just
Yeah.
I'd rather us go and loan a bloody centre mid and stick Havertz up front, because at this point he's not a centre mid. Whatever he is, he's not a centre mid at this point. So yeah. But anyway, I think we'll wrap it up there. This was supposed to be a shorter pod, but actually ended up going a little bit longer. But there were some laughs that came along with it, so we'll let that one go. But a big thank you to everyone for listening. If you disagree, if you have anything to talk about when it comes to Sancho, if it comes to the Tottenham performance, anything to do with some of Ten Hag signings, please get down in the comments and let us know. Do you think Hannibal? Do you think Fernandes should have been loaned out? Do you think they should have been sold? Let us know down below, and we'll definitely get back to you. Anthony might rage at you, but it's part of the game, man. It's part of the game. But anyway, yeah, big thank you for listening, and a big thank you to you, Ants, for joining. We'll see you next week.
Cheers, guys. Thanks, John. Speak to you next week.
Sports Social Podcast Network.